Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners work session for Wednesday, April 14th, 2021, 2:02 p.m. My name is Ty Mentor, Chair of the Board. We have Vice Chair Commissioner Gary Edwards and Commissioner Carolina Mejia. We have County Manager Amiro Chavez, and Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell, Economic Development Manager Jenica Machado, and a whole host of other guests that I will let our guests introduce. The public can attend by following along on our Thurston County YouTube channel, where the live stream will be available, or join by conference call at 360-252-9020. The PIN is 1234. The topic for today's work session is the Thurston Climate Action Team CPACER issue, and I'm going to start with the county manager to get us going, and then hopefully we'll get introductions from our guests.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is a follow-up to a couple briefings that you received related to the CPACER. It's a little bit of a background. Back in 2020, the Washington State Legislature passed the CPACE, enabling through the House Bill 2405 legislation that allows counties to establish a commercial property assess clean energy and resilience, also known as the CPACER. You heard some potential opportunities on previous briefings. What you're going to be hearing today is a little refresher of what the program can do to property owners here in the county. And also, as part of the next steps, the last briefing was, what are the commitments the county will have if the board is interested in implementing this particular program. So again, today you will hear two pieces, a refresher on the CPACER, and I believe we have individuals here that can provide additional perspective and perhaps some experience. And then the second part will be Jenica will walk you through as to what elements the county will see if the board decides to move forward in that direction. Just to, there is not a decision expected by the board today. I want to be right up front. This is a continued conversation, and depending on how the briefing goes, either I will bring this item on a later decision point. If not, we can organize additional briefing if there is a need to do so. So with that in mind, I think the members of the Thurston Climate Action Team is here. Who's going to take the lead on that? Go ahead. And please introduce yourself for the record.
Great. My name is Chris Van Dalen, and I'm on the board of the Thurston Climate Action Team. I also represent the Northwest Eco Building Guild. And both of our organizations have been actively advocating for the adoption of the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan, which is adopted earlier this year by the commissioners. And while CPACER was not actually one of the priority actions, I think they were, it fell off the list because we were assuming that it was going to be done already by then, which it was in terms of the state legislature. But there is definitely an action that the county has the opportunity to take in order to authorize this program and administer it. And we've prepared all of the information that's needed for you all. I worked with Jenica in the economic development program to prepare the procedures that would be necessary to implement the program, and brought together a panel of experts from around the country to join us today to answer any more specific technical questions that may come up from the commissioners or from the staff. It's just a real pleasure to be working with you on this, and I appreciate the opportunity to come before you today. Chairman, Sir, Co-Chair Edwards, and Commissioner Mejia, thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to turn it over. Well, I guess there'll be just some more introductions, but then we'll turn it over to Greg Queaton with TCAT, who's going to give us that overview presentation. I'll end my introduction and pass it on to the next person. Maybe Greg, you want to introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll come back to you for the press.
Sounds good. Hello, my name is Greg Queaton. I'm a climate researcher and volunteer with TCAT, and have been working with Chris and other experts to bring CPACER into fruition for Thurston County.
Maybe I'll just facilitate. Michael, would you go next? And then Cliff.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Yaki, Senior Vice President and Senior Counsel for Policy and Programs for Petros Pace Finance, one of the country's largest private capital providers of commercial pace financing in the country. And I've two connections with everyone here. One, I was like you in local government. I was on the Board of Supervisors for the city and county of San Francisco for a number of years. And I also had a hand in writing SB 2405 in 2020 and working with many of the people here in this room to get it passed. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have about how CPACE works here and how it works in the 26 other states where it's active nationally and doing very, very well.
Cliff and then Rich.
Surely. My name is Cliff Kellogg, and I lead the CPACE Alliance, which is a trade association of the private investment companies that have financed over $2 billion in CPACE transactions across the country and more than 2,500 projects. And our membership consists of those investment companies. And previously, I was the president of a community bank here in Washington, D.C., as well as a community. I started my career as a community development banker on the south side of Chicago, and have worked in the federal government in the Treasury Department a few times. So thank you very much for the opportunity to visit with you and address any questions you may have.
Go ahead, Rich, and then Court.
Hi, my name is Court Olson. I live up in Bellevue, and I helped to get this pot stirred and get it going way back when, a couple of years ago. And I was, along with Michael Yaki and another couple of folks, helped to author the bill that got passed. We have been working in a group called Shift Zero that really created the committee that got this ball rolling, and I was co-chair of that committee. So I'm happy to be here today and answer any questions you might have. And I'll just say we really need this kind of opportunity for our commercial building owners to make a change and fix our buildings so they're not so carbon intensive and polluting as they currently are. So thanks for considering this this bill and a program there in Thurston County.
Go ahead, Rich.
Hi, it's Rich Martinez. I'm the director and senior vice president, Kitsap Bank, family-owned bank, $1.5 billion bank here on the peninsula, headquartered on the peninsula. And we were active, like others, Court and others, supporting this legislation early in its infancy. And we have a portfolio that is centered in real estate. And as you might imagine, the performance of that real estate, it's key to us. And we have seen this legislation as complementing the further resiliency of that portfolio by allowing and providing capital to further improve the performance of that real estate and the longevity of it over time from a collateral standpoint, but also from the opportunity to deploy that capital for new projects that are coming online to further improve the long-term resiliency of that potential asset.
Do others want to introduce, or should we go into the presentation?
Who else needs to be introduced? Go ahead and start the presentation, please.
Over to you, Greg. And if Greg could share his screen, I think that's how this is going to go, or yeah?
Yeah, that works. Everyone can see that. I'm just going to give a brief reintroduction of CPACER, just to set the stage. Certainly leave as much time as possible to interact with the experts that are here that know far more about this than I do, but I've been helping shepherd along here for the last couple of months. So CPACER is a tax assessment that serves to finance deep energy retrofits, renewable energy, and also resilience in Thurston County and commercial buildings. CPACER is active across the country, and multiple counties in Washington are also considering CPACER. And so small example of, or an example of possible retrofits to commercial buildings that are possible with CPACER. Things along the lines of efficient lighting, heating and cooling, windows, insulation, adding solar panels, electric vehicle charging, and then also resilience retrofits, fire, floor, and seismic hardening. CPACER serves to provide a long horizon set of financing by assessing a lien to the building, and then attaches that financing to the building itself rather than the owners. Some of the benefits of CPACER for Thurston County is more local jobs as we do this work to make our buildings more efficient and less polluting, as well as safer and healthier. Reduced energy use and carbon emissions, healthier buildings through updated HVAC and thermal envelopes, and also increased resilience and then a direct value for the property owner themselves. That value comes through the increase in value of the property, as well as the decrease in operating expenses that allows for the property owner to pay for CPACER, and also allows these deep retrofits with up to 30-year financing. And I'll leave it there. Any more detailed questions, there's experts in the room that can help. Thank you.
Hey, Greg, we don't have that presentation in the packet. Could you send that to the front desk here at the Commissioner's office, please?
Sure. I think I saw it attached to the invite, but I can send it over.
So who's next?
Okay. If there are no questions, I can proceed with pulling out Thurston County's role within the application process steps. I'll share my screen. Okay. So the series of steps that I'll walk through are based on the assumption that an ordinance has already been passed. And so included within the reference documents, I passed forward a draft ordinance that we had received from TCAP. And so jumping right in, we have step one. This does not involve the county. This is the applicant and the capital provider prepping the application. Step two, the application is submitted and the county is set to review the application. And so here's when we see, and you'll hear me use the word designated official. At the discretion of the commissioners, they can appoint a person or a department to be the designated official who receives the application and the documents from the capital provider and the applicant. And so after they receive the application, they will review and not look at the application based on content, but we'll be looking at completeness of the application. And so they will be using a checklist to go through and see if they have all the documents that they needed and the application documents are complete. They have 10 days to review this, although they can communicate another 10 days of extension. And they would provide the applicant either approval of the application saying that it is complete or that it is not complete, and they would let them know that. The next step, step three, the counsel for the capital provider drafts the closing documents, and they would send this to the county. And if the designated official is elected to record the closing documents, the county may require the completed documents to be accompanied with payment. One, the payment would be a program fee, and then the other payment could be the recording costs. And so to kind of break down what I mean by program fee is that the county is entitled to a fee equal to 1% of the amount financed by the property owner, with a minimum of $2,500 and a cap at $15,000. And this has to be paid before closing and recording. And then the recording fee with the auditor's office is $103 for the first page and then $1 per subsequent page. So both of these costs are not on the county, they are on the applicant.
Jenica, can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So the step 3, back a slide, says if the designated official is elected to record closing documents, then all this other stuff. So it sounds like they don't have to choose the county, or what are the alternatives to that?
Mm-hmm. I asked that question as well. So the designated official is chosen if, as it may be the person who received and approves the application, but they could also elect for the capital provider to, or I believe the applicant, to pick up the documents and go through the recording process at the auditor's office on their own. Because the recording process with the auditor is not going to be special for CPACER. It's what they already do. And so it'd be fitting into an existing process. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Is there an advantage then to using the designated official?
I'd probably defer that to one of the experts in the room that may have more experience with this program, if they would like to share some of their experience.
If I may, Commissioner?
Yeah.
For the record, Michael Yaki, Petros Pace Finance. The statute gives the option for either the county to record in its normal recording manner, or if so elect, they can delegate it to the capital provider. The reason why you might want to delegate it to the capital provider is that recording is a function that occurs at funding, at close, and the timing of that needs to be just right. So rather than have to tell a county official we need it to be recorded on X day at X time in order for us to execute, sometimes it's easier for us to do it. In either way, for us to get these documents that have been executed by the county, we will make sure that we pay the program fee. It's not like if we decide to do it ourselves, we don't leave you a check. The check will be left for the county program fee, and then we would pay the recording costs ourselves.
Thank you.
Chair, I didn't get directions when we started. Are we going to be able to ask questions as we go along? It sounds like there were some pauses in there. So
I think we can. I mean, there wasn't a lot of preliminary questions, and we're moving. I don't know how long. I guess Chris, or I don't know. We kind of gauge this depending on how much material there is to cover, whether we pepper questions throughout the briefing versus wait till the end. I guess I don't know how much material there is to cover, so
we just have a few more slides on my
let's just
part.
ask questions as they occur to us then.
Ask questions as we go along?
Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, are there other jurisdictions close by that we can take a look at and see how this is working for them?
It is my understanding that King County is also looking at this as an option, but as far as I'm aware at the moment, they have not.
Not there yet? Okay. How about if I'm a small business person and I don't want to get a loan, but I want to participate? What kind of capital outlay am I talking about?
I will defer that to one of our technical experts.
Go ahead.
If I may, Commissioner Clifton Kellogg, for the record. the purpose of the program is to provide an alternate source of financing to property owners of commercial property. This is only commercial property. So we're speaking only of office buildings or retail establishments, warehouses, manufacturing facilities, apartment buildings.
Okay,
We're not.
I guess then I need to know, how much do I need to raise the rent to pay for it, or charge more for my product, or whatever it is? I just need some financial advice as far as, I realize that I guess we can borrow money, but some people don't want to borrow money because they don't like the strings maybe that go with it. I don't know. And if I don't have something to compare with or talk with, I'm kind of asking questions without knowing enough about it. And this briefing, by the time you get done with it, I doubt I'm going to know that much more. So I have to ask now as we go along. How about this? How about, is there a lien on the building if you go through this process that you're proposing? And what happens, somebody goes belly up, I don't know, it puts them over the threshold and they go broke. Who pays the bill? Who pays the bank back? Is there a lien on the building? Is it a tax foreclosure? Some of that kind of stuff.
Commissioner, this is Michael Yaki from Petros Pays Finance. Let me sort of go through the steps here. These are private capital providers like myself. There's no government funds involved, and it only goes for those things that are allowed by the statute. They're called qualified improvements. Those improvements would be energy efficiency if you wanted a new HVAC system, a new boiler for your small business, a new air conditioning system. It would be for water efficiency if you wanted to put in more efficient plumbing into your building, or resiliency if you wanted to reinforce your building to deal with an earthquake. Those are the things that commercial PACE is required. It can only fund those types of items. So first, the question would be, is what you're seeking to fund qualified under the program? The second question would be, how much are the cost of those, and if you have someone else who has already lent you money on the property, say you had a large loan, a startup loan on the property that's secured by the property itself, we would have to ask their permission to go forward with this, whether it would happen or not, because the result of this process is a lien assessment lien created by the county and placed on the property to repay this financing. So we would get your lender's consent. We would work with you in determining what is eligible that you're looking for in terms of financing. Are you looking for a new HVAC? Are you looking for a new boiler, et cetera? And then underwrite the property and determine whether or not you have the ability to pay this. Now, there are some advantages to you as a property owner using the CPACE assessment. One, you're not personally liable. It stays with the property, like a local improvement district, for example. It stays with the property. So if you were to sell, you have the ability, if the next purchaser wants, to simply transfer the balance of the payments to the next person. Why would they do that? Because they're getting an improved property. They're getting a better, more efficient HVAC system or solar or something like that. So that is an advantage to you. If you were to go belly up, and I would just say, we've done this 2,500 times across the country, as Mr. Kellogg said. None have gone to foreclosure. None have gone belly up, and the reason is pretty simple. Your building is essentially being underwritten 3 different times. The first time by whoever originally lent you the money and still has a lien on it. Second would be by us, and the third would be by the original lien holder, again, looking to see whether or not what we do and what you do in terms of payments is enough to basically cover their costs and expenses. Do they have enough money to do it? So that's why it's very unlikely that this will happen. If it does happen, the county, by law, and we wrote this into the statute, has no responsibility or liability for this assessment. All the risk is on us, and some of the risk is borne by anyone else who has a lien on the property who consented to it. So but the beauty of how this works is that the reason people consent to it, again, there's no personal liability to the owner. And secondly, only what you forgot to pay or didn't pay. Say if you missed the January bill or the July bill, I can't remember what it is in Washington, so excuse my ignorance. But whenever the property tax bill normally goes out, and that bill comes in, if you don't pay that, and you're in default, you only default as to that payment, not to the entire rest of the assessment. So there are opportunities for the other lender to step in. This is a long way of saying there are a lot of different safeguards here. The county is not liable. The risk is on companies like ourselves who make the financing, and it's only eligible for those things that the statute allows, which is energy efficiency, water efficiency, renewable energy, and resiliency measures. And if you qualify for all those, you have the opportunity to work with a company like ourselves, who will be, we're all over, we're listed on the county website, et cetera, that you can contact and ask, am I eligible? Do I qualify? And does that work?
Is there a particular period of time that it takes the landowner or the property owner to recoup any investment, and they might recoup that through energy savings, that type of thing? Do you have a history on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. First of all, what we do is that the statute says explicitly that the amount of time you have to pay cannot exceed the amount of time, the amount of useful life of that particular product. So if you have an HVAC system that Westinghouse or GE says has a useful life of 15 years, we can't finance it for more than 15 years, number one. Number two, when you do that, when you apply, the county will have to make sure that it is accompanied by a certification from a licensed professional that says this is a product that qualifies under the statute, that will produce energy savings for the customer, and is more efficient, meets the standards, et cetera. Now, what you may want to do as a property owner yourself is conduct an energy audit to determine how these things will pay back over time. Now, energy audits are only estimates. What we found sometimes is that you get a more efficient system. You may spend the same amount of money, but you may open your business for a longer period of time, or you may expand the size of your business, all those things being equal. But you will be spending less money per amount of energy than you would have before. But you can, if you want to, engage in energy audit to determine how your savings will be over time, and compare that to the cost of the improvement, and make a determination whether or not you believe this is an investment that you want to make in your property.
Maybe just one quick follow-up on that.
Sure.
So if you've got a record, so to speak, of 2,500 successes, what is the benefit or the reason that you would need to have a county ordinance versus just a voluntary program that business owners may want to just opt into?
Okay, well, Commissioner, I'm going to now go into a world that none of us really want to enter, and that is finance. And that is the reason. This is the very question that was raised by legislators in Olympia when we were writing the bill, because they said, well, why can't you just do this voluntarily, et cetera, et cetera. And the fact is that it's all about the cost of money and how long is that cost of money. And because we're essentially using, in many ways, the public finance backbone of a county, the ability to put an assessment on a property and collect it over time that stays on the property, that doesn't accelerate, that doesn't extinguish on foreclosure, which are all key elements of how you finance parks, playgrounds, and other places in your own county. Because we are essentially mimicking that, we are able to access money at a much lower level, at much longer terms than, for example, you might with some other institutions. And what that enables us to do is then pass on to the consumer, the homeowner, the business owner, the property owner, those same kinds of benefits, so that instead of, say, deciding that, gee, X depot offers me 0% financing for 24 months, and then it kicks up to 24% over, and I have to pay it off in 5 years. We can offer you 5.5% level over 15 years. So you can project your cash flow accordingly. You can do that. And it all is because we are rated by the financial world as essentially, in many ways, like that of a municipality when they issue a bond. So we're seen as safe, we're seen as secure, but because we're safe and secure, we get money at a low cost. We only lend it at a low cost as well, because it's not like something that's going to get you a big return. You can't invest it in GameStop or something like that. And we can do it over a longer period of time than another institution that may want to do it over 5 years or 6 years at like 0%, but with a big balloon. So these are that's essentially why the county has to enact it, because the county offering essentially of allowing us to ride off their public finance backbone is what enables us to provide the kind of financing and terms that property owners want that may not be available on the commercial markets. If it's available, they can find it. But if not, we were created precisely because of the lack of access to this type of financing for these type of improvements over this kind of time that property owners need.
So we've got some other folks that could maybe offer some perspective as well. Court, do you want to jump in? And then Rich?
Thanks. Yes. You might recall I'm a commercial building owner client, or my client, and I've done some projects in Thurston County and around the state. But from the owner's perspective, the building owner's perspective, this is a unique and very advantageous financing mechanism because of the unique way that it's reinforced by the county. It allows an owner to take out a loan that does not appear on their balance sheet and is not an obligation to them if they decide to sell the property. So they don't have to think of how long they're going to hold the property to justify the investment. They don't have to think about the credit impact that it has to their business or their personal ledger. That's the big advantage of this type of financing mechanism and why it's become so popular in many other states. It's a unique way of financing that makes it much less onerous to a building owner. And that's why we're encouraging counties to take this up, because then building owners will be much more readily able to do the improvements to their properties that they would like to do but hesitate to do because they don't know how long they're going to hold the property, or because they're worried about the impact on their financial credit rating. It does give them a whole lot more latitude than traditional financing does.
Okay. Court, I do have a question, but I don't see our chair there right now, and I know Commissioner Mejia has a question.
Commissioner Mejia, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would like to know the burden that the county would have to take on if we implemented this program. And, I'm seeing on the program fees, the compensation for time and cost, but I'm thinking, are we going to have to hire staff to handle this program? Do they need to have the specialized training to handle these applications? Just because just in reading the steps that the county would have to take, I'm seeing, the county administrator reviews the application. There's a designated official. So does extra staff have to be hired for that? And I guess that's the burden that the county would take on if we do this program.
Well, I could speak to that, or others on the call could speak to that, but I'll just briefly say that we're not likely to see a huge flood of applications for this kind of opportunity in the near term. And the longer term, as it becomes more widely known and popular, perhaps there would be the need for additional staffing, but it's not very likely in the next few years from my point of view. Once a person or persons in the county becomes familiar with the checklist that is being provided, and they know how to review that checklist, that's about all the expertise that they need. And the checklist is fairly well explained to them. So I wouldn't say this requires a lot of expertise. I would expect that a reviewer person sitting in the chair for the county would probably not need more than a couple of hours to review an application and comment on its completeness or not, because they have that detailed checklist in front of them. So this is not a huge administrative burden to the county.
This is Cliff Kellogg. I'd like to just pitch in and reinforce what Court said. We would think it would be very successful if Thurston County had 2 or 3 applications in the first year, and maybe that rises to 4 or 5 applications by year 5. So this is not a high volume undertaking, and the skills of the reviewer are the same kind of skills that would be used to check the completeness of any application, such as a building permit, or someone in the planning department or economic development department who might have any experience with business lending. This is to confirm that all of the elements have been prepared by the capital provider and the professional engineer who performs the energy analysis on the site. So we intentionally wrote this so that it was very light touch, almost no touch on the county, just to receive the documents, confirm that all the elements are there, and either to record the documents, have that done by the designated official, or even to leave, as Michael said, to leave that task to the capital provider. So we were quite conscious at the state level because there were questions raised by some of the county officials about administrative burden, and the statute removes all of that burden from the county. So it should be, I'm sure the first application will be take a little longer than the second or the third, but that's just familiarity with the checklist. And we believe it is designed to have the lightest touch possible.
And Commissioner, this is Michael Yaki from Petros Pace Finance. Just to add one thing from experience with other states. States that have similar type statutes to Washington, such as Utah or Nebraska, we have seen, first of all, both of those states went from nowhere to in the top 10 of CPACE financings, which is great. At the same time, though, because it's scattered across lots of different jurisdictions, I would say that neither of those states has one county received more than 2 or 3 applications a year. It takes a long time to sort of develop and build these together and work with property owners, determine whether something qualifies or not, et cetera. And then you have to go through the lender consent process. So it's most of the work is done on our end, and the statute intentionally does that. What we see in Utah and Nebraska, for example, is that they just assign an individual. In Utah, it's someone in the county attorney's office. In Nebraska, it's someone in the planning department. They take it in, they review it. It takes them very little time. Their application fee is very similar. And we would love it for you to be overwhelmed to the point where you are going to be requiring to need additional staff. But the fact of the matter is, you will not. This is the most light touch statute that we've ever written in the country. And but as a former county official, I'm acutely sensitive to this. And in fact, in the statute itself, is immunity to the county, its employees, its directors, including yourselves, from any actions taken in furtherance of this, because just in case if a boo-boo were made, again, the risk is on us to get it right, not on you.
So since Commissioner Mejia asked that question, Jenica was halfway through explaining the steps and what the county's role is. So let's let her finish that, because that will partially answer Commissioner Mejia's question.
All right, we just have a few left. So we went over the program fee and recording costs. Step 4, the county will record the assessment and the supporting documents. And so here, the county can utilize our current recording process with the auditor's office to record all the documents, and the recording fee will be required to complete this step. And the recording fee was $103 for the first page and $1 for every subsequent page. The next couple steps, we have do not actually include a Thurston County role. Step 5 is upon confirmation of recording, the capital provider will disperse the funds in accordance with the finance agreement. And then step 6, the property owner begins making assessment payments per the assessment agreement and in accordance with the financing agreement. And again, there's no Thurston County role on this step. That concludes all of the application process steps and all of the roles that Thurston County would need to play within those. I know we've peppered in some questions in the meantime, but that is the conclusion of that, if there are additional questions for the technical experts.
I would like to just jump in. There have been a number of questions, and I think Rich Martinez has had his hand up there and would like to maybe address some of the previous questions or other perspectives.
Hi, it's Rich Martinez with Kitsap Bank again. Thank you again for letting us make this presentation. I wanted to give you a little background on some of the work that we did early on in preparation for this, and that we went out to our existing portfolio and interviewed 10 of our top 10 real estate clients and introduced this legislation to them. And in every single case, all 10 said they would propose using this financing for further improvements of their buildings, multifamily, strip malls, commercial buildings, and some manufacturing space. And the kicker for each one of the owners was that the assessment followed the building. And so that's a really key point here. And from the bank standpoint, I run our municipal banking group. And as a matter of fact, I just was working with Ann Lundeen for a project down at Black Lake. And I can tell you that from a municipal standpoint, much like Michael had indicated earlier, the cost of capital and the longer term financing that aligns with the deployment of that capital for these particular improvements to the buildings, it's much easier for that capital to get deployed with that assessment following the building versus following the borrower. And so from the bank standpoint, from the capital provider standpoint, we were very much in support of this legislation because of that nuance. And so it decouples the county's responsibility for managing that, and it puts it on the capital provider's plate. And so once that underwriting is completed, we're really looking at the length of whatever that professional has designated the life of that improvement will be. And so we've engaged with McKinstry, we've engaged with University Mechanical to set up agreements so that they can actually go out and begin doing this work with us as we proceed to look at projects as they come forward. And the question was brought up earlier, what other counties that could we look at it doing this? All of the counties are coming out of the gate at the same time. And so there's some are deploying more resources. King County, for one, is going to present to council, I think, in early June for their presentation for approval for the ordinance. Pierce County has just approved their sustainability plan, and from embedded in that plan and moved up from an original schedule of deployment of last year or next year into this year is the CPACER program, which they'll begin looking at their ordinance language here right away. And Skagit County, Whatcom County, there's Snohomish County, there's activity taking place in each one of these counties. And so in preparation for this, again, I want to reiterate that as a capital provider, we feel very confident that this aligns very closely with the deployment of capital for municipal use, much like you would see for a LID or some type of an assessment, even a revenue-based assessment that would follow that activity and deployment of the capital. And so we look at the cost of that capital to the entity as being that it will be much lower than what you might see if you were to go out and borrow, $1 million to replace your HVAC system or deploy a new solar system on top of your roof to change your energy consumption. And so there's one last point I want to make, and that is that CETA, there's going to be a lot of momentum to do this work in Washington because there's other legislation around the state to improve our performance of our buildings. And so what this tool provides is an easy pathway to initiate that and begin to go forward with that. And so although we anticipate, much like the others have characterized, that the out of the gates process will be relatively slow, we do believe that there'll be momentum based on just of our research with our clients that will build over the next 2 to 3 years once the ordinances are approved in each of the counties.
Thank you. Chris made the point in the chat, not everyone can see, that the CETA is the Clean Energy Transformation Act from last year.
Right.
Really good. Okay, great. Well, that's all good information. Ramiro, County Manager.
The county treasurer would like to provide some feedback.
I can't hear you, Ramiro.
The county treasurer would like to provide some feedback, but before you give the floor to Jeff, I have a question. What is the value added to the capital providers in the banks? I mean, it has to be a financial benefit out of this, right? What is it?
That's a great question. From our standpoint, we have a 115-year history. Our core strength, our core activities have been real estate lending. And so we look at this also from the perspective of what does it do to protect our collateral? So if we have a building and that building is aging and not being taken care of or not having new systems put into it, the collateral, even though the marketplace may produce a market value that's higher, the building is actually aging. And so we look at that as there's deterioration in that asset. And so we have taken the approach that if we can deploy capital that improves the value of that asset over time, and then also improves the performance of that building over time, it improves the marketplace. And so from a global standpoint, we look at those steps as improving the resiliency of our community and maintaining, sustaining the viability of those capital investments in our community. And so that's a really important aspect for us. And so it's a deployment to improve the building. It's a deployment to preserve and maintain the sustainability of that asset in the community. And it further goes to maintain a environment that creates additional jobs, deploying those resources, those construction resources over time in the absence of ups and downs in the marketplace. And so, as you probably are aware, there's been, over the last 12 months, some real big rises and falls in construction activity over the last 12 months. What we see is that this will help level that out over time. And so that employment factor is a nuance that I think gets overlooked a little bit in terms of We look about sustainability and environmental impact, but there's an employment factor that we as a bank thinks helps level load what that looks like going forward in the marketplace.
If I could I wanted to address one question before, and then of course we want to hear from Jeff. Commissioner Edwards asked earlier about the cost of the capital versus the energy savings over time, and one of the things that I didn't really think the point didn't get made is that by having the term of the finance be longer on this, it reduces the monthly payment down to a place where it's equivalent or less than the energy savings that are produced from the improvements. And that allows the cash flow on the investment to be positive for the landowner, and also to benefit the tenants of the building who can contribute to that through higher rents. But it's not even necessary, I don't think, to raise the rent, because the cost of the improvement is paying for itself over that longer period of time.
We go to the treasurer, and sorry, Jeff, I did not realize that was you masked up there in the boardroom, so I apologize for not introducing you. The County Treasurer, Jeff Gadman, and then I'll go to Commissioner Edwards, I think was next.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Not very well.
Come on now.
That's better.
I got it. Okay. Thank you. I'm County Treasurer Jeff Gadman, and actually very familiar with this legislation from when it was first introduced in 2019. And Court and I ate lunch together several times trying to work on getting the bill to where the county treasurers liked it. And I will say he and his teammates actually erased about 99% of the treasurer's concerns. This is a great program. I think all of us can agree that if you're developing building resiliency, energy efficiency, saving water and all of that, it's very, very exemplary. There are a couple of questions. One of the big ones that's not answered in the law the way it's written right now, and it might get cured later, is what happens in the event, because this lien survives property tax foreclosure, there is a possibility, slight possibility, that a property could go to auction and not receive enough bids to get sold at auction and becomes tax title. And the law very clearly says there's no liability on the county for this lien, but it's silent as to what happens in the event that the property becomes tax title. Does that lien just sit there unanswered for a while? Like I said, I'm sure there'll be amendments in the future, especially if there's ever a court case about it. But I do want to appreciate all of you, express my appreciation to all of you for explaining this and how this works in mostly layman's terms so that it's easily understood, and y'all did a great job.
Commissioner Edwards, did you have something?
Yeah, just, I don't know, I'm trying to make this fit, and I don't even know if I'm using the right figures or not, but Michael used a figure of, say, 5.5% on a loan, I guess. And so if you make your improvements, your assessed value goes up, your heat bill goes down. I'll just use that as an example. And that might balance out. The 5.5% over a longer period of time, I don't know where that benefit fits in, or if it's a benefit, if that's really the number, or might you get a conventional loan at 3.5%? I don't know. But the assessed value, so you're paying more taxes on the property at the same time. So how does it all fit? Then Court said something about maybe he had a building here in Thurston County, and I'm wondering, had you brought it up to some of these specifications and could actually show us where that benefit took place, or you just haven't? Maybe I misinterpreted what you said. I thought you said you had property buildings here, or no? No?
Well, I can clarify if you like. I probably was too brief. I have completed projects in Thurston County from different building owners, one of which is the Olympia City Hall for City of Olympia, but I have experience outside of Thurston County with owners previously in prior years interested in making the kind of improvements to their buildings that are enabled in this legislation. And in all of, well, let's just say in 5 out of 6 of those building ownerships declined to go forward with the improvements because of the 2 reasons we already spoke. They didn't know how long they were going to be holding the building or owning the building, and they were worried about having that debt pay off if they decided to move away. And the second reason is they just didn't want to have that obligation show up on their balance sheet. And this type of program takes away both of those worries, and thereby I think would make probably most of those 6 clients that I spoke with more likely to have proceeded with the improvements that they wanted to do if they have this kind of program in place. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I thought maybe you had something there that could have been an example. So when we talk about the assessed valuation going up, okay, more taxes, but the heat bill goes down. So does that always kind of equal out as well? And figuring you're paying on a loan at 5.5%, just using that because that's what was given. So how does that all fit together? And does it end up being a benefit to the property owner, to the tenants? Is it always a benefit, or, oh, we got to raise it, we got to raise the rent 5%? I don't know. I'm just grasping at straws trying to figure it all out, to be honest with you.
I could comment quickly on that, if I may. Again, it's Court Olson. It depends on the individual property and what the improvements are. Please be aware that the kind of improvements aren't necessarily limited to energy efficiency improvements. If you want to upgrade your fire protection system or upgrade your seismic enhancement to the property, those aren't going to reduce your long-term costs other than your insurance costs. And yet they're going to make the property safer and more viable for any occupants, and therefore make the property more attractive and likely make a building owner easily justify increasing the rent on the property. So the property, depending upon the improvements, might not require an increase in the rent, and then again it may, but if it does, it's most likely going to be to benefit of tenants, and they would be likely attracted to the building because of those improvements. So it'll vary property to property and with the decision of the owner on the kind of improvements they want to make.
Hey, do you ever work with any commercial real estate folks? Just a real quick. I know we're about out of time.
This is Rich Martinez. I think to add to that question and Court's comments, this legislation has the support of the builders, NAOP, a number of organizations that are deeply embedded in commercial real estate activities. And I'll share with you just anecdotally that we are looking at 2 different projects, one in Pierce County and one in Kitsap County, that one of them is 600 units and the other one is 400 units. They're brand new projects. And in those projects, as part of the capital stack, is a deployment of CPACER financing. So it's in both cases, it's appealing to the developers in their capital stack model with how they're looking at potential new projects.
Okay, we are out of time, guys. I don't know everybody's schedule, and be about 3 o'clock. And I'm going to ask the county manager if we can wrap this up or if we need to tie up any loose ends that he sees.
Yeah, based on the interaction, I think it may be worth to come back with another briefing. And I will ask is probably, I will engage the board to give me some questions. So we can probably have a little more interactive conversation about this program in the upcoming briefing. So I will do that. I will send an email to the commissioners to give me some feedback, and I'll work with Jenica to get some additional questions for the next briefing.
Thanks very much for the time to speak with all of you. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners on BCAT. Really appreciate your leadership on this. Thank you.
Okay, great. We are adjourned then.
Thank you.